Ready, Set, EdTech with Lindsay and Jan. I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Jan.
And we are super excited about this new podcast professional development series that we're going to be offering to you. Our goal is to provide you with PD sessions that are available through YouTube so that you can watch on the go, take some ideas away, and apply them in the classroom. Before we get started today, I would like to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves to let you get to know us. My name is Lindsay Skidmore. I am a Senior Digital Learning and Technology Support Specialist here in Duplin County. I've been serving in this role for 8 years. I love this role. It's an opportunity for me to work with teachers in the classroom to create some engaging learning opportunities for students using the tech tools and technology, which is kind of my passion, kind of my thing. Also, prior to coming into this position, I did serve as a middle grades ELA and social studies teacher for 10 years, where I received my national board certification as well as my AIG certification. And my passion is just working with teachers, creating those fun, engaging learning opportunities that we wouldn't have had before without the use of technology. So super excited to work with you guys in this podcast series. Jan, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
I've been in education now for 14 years. I started out as a teacher assistant and moved on to third grade. And then I moved on to the CTE position as a middle school business teacher and also a K-5 STEMA teacher before joining the digital learning team this school year. I'm super excited and thankful to be in this position as a digital learning and technology support specialist. And I'm glad to be working with Lindsay.
Yes, and we're super glad to have you on the team. You bring a lot of different experience in your education career, and so super excited to talk with you and share our ideas with teachers. Teachers, as you're listening to us, if you have ideas or would like to see different episodes, give us feedback, and we'll see how it goes. Can't wait for today's episode.
Today we're going to be talking about teaching ELL students effectively from a distance. I feel like with this year being our new hybrid remote learning environment, that this was really needed because I feel like some of our ELL students probably have struggled a little bit with having to get used to being online and learning online instead of face-to-face. Not only is this something you can, some strategies for ELL students, but also pretty much any student can benefit from the things we're going to cover in here because you got these students with maybe some learning disabilities, or even a student, any student can benefit from anything we say today. So I do want to say that.
Especially in this remote environment. We've all been thrown into this environment. It's been challenging for us as teachers and for our students and our parents. And so all of these strategies that we'll talk about today, I think will help make the learning more impactful and meaningful for our students when we're trying to engage them in this distance situation.
So today we're just going to touch on a few things. We're going to talk about the affective filter and what that is and what that means for our ELL students and you as a teacher. We're going to talk about comprehensible input and output, what that is, and how you can make your content comprehensible to your students, more comprehensible. We're going to talk about social and emotional needs, which I feel like is a real, almost top priority before we even talk about content, getting them comfortable with you and the environment they're in and the way they're learning now. We're going to share some strategies and some digital tools for you to use too that will help those students as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is an affective filter. This is a metaphor that a guy named Stephen Krashen, I believe is his name. He is a university instructor at University of Southern California, I believe. And he came up with this theory in his second language acquisition study. ELL students have this affective filter in their brain, I guess, that it depends on their emotional variables and how they understand and take in the information, basically. So a lot of emotional variables include motivation. They need to be motivated to be able to learn. Self-confidence. If they're not confident with themselves or with what they're doing, they may have this block. This picture shows you what an affective filter is. It's like an imaginary wall that rises and falls depending on how comfortable they are with what they're learning at the time or what's being put in front of them.
Which completely makes sense. You think about us and how we are as adults and as people just in general. If we are feeling any bit of anxiety or self-conscious, we are naturally have this barrier that we put up. And so when we think about these students that are coming in with learning a second language, that they're automatically, I would think that their first response is a little bit of that self-confidence, lacking some self-confidence, being a little insecure, which I'm sure just puts a barrier into them being able to receive information because they're focused on that problem that they're facing.
And it's basically like that shutdown mode is what I think about when I think of it being high. So being high means they're blocking it out. And when it says personality traits, that just means the shy kids, the ones that maybe they're not extroverts, they're introverts. They don't like to share. And then a lot of times their filter stays high because they just don't feel comfortable in maybe the situations they get in.
And even the ones that are extroverts, right? The ones that are showing out, they usually show out when they're trying to protect themselves or guard themselves from something.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. So when we think about the affective filter, we got to think, how can we get the information into the brains of these kids for them to comprehend it? Well, if their filter is high, it's gonna, like this picture shows, it's gonna bounce right off, basically. So we need to make the content comprehensible and make them feel comfortable with it to be able for it to get through that filter, or for them to lower the filter so it can get through. So in order to even understand what you need to do and to get that filter low, you got to know what comprehensible input is. And of course, on here it says when students are able to understand the essence. That don't mean they completely, perfectly understand it, but it just means that they have like a sense of what's going on, what is being said or presented to them. And that'll let them feel comfortable enough for it to come on in,
Yeah, if they can just grasp a little bit of what's going on, then that helps. Yeah, absolutely.
And the other side of this picture shows, output, and we're going to talk about that shortly. But if they can get it in and understand it, then they give you a better response to it. So they'll be able to give you optimal output. You get optimal input, they give optimal output. And this is just a funny little GIF, me and Lindsay.
we debate this one.
I say GIF, she says GIF, and you know what? It's okay, either way. But this is a little GIF that I've found that to me explains what happens when input is trying to get in when the affective filter is high. The kids are blocking it out. Like I said, they're shutting it out. They're not comfortable. They don't want to look at it or learn it because they don't understand it. So this kind of gives you
bouncing back.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a visual of what that's going to look like.
So it doesn't matter how much we give them, it's still going to bounce off. So giving them more is not going to help until we lower that filter.
Yeah. And I mean, usually, I guess as a teacher, I remember I knew when their filter was high. I didn't know about the filter then, but I could tell when they were like, I just can't do it,
Yeah,
or don't want to do it.
Shutdown mode, yeah.
So before we even start talking about how to present the content to them, I think we need to talk about SEL, which is social and emotional learning.
Because that's what's going to lower that filter.
Yeah, and obviously they need to be comfortable with you and with what they're learning or what they're looking at. And until you can get them comfortable, I think that's going to keep their filter, they're not going to lower it for you. So this shows some ideas of how to get that filter down through ESL. ESL, SEL. And that's through like building relationships with your students. Obviously, if they don't relate to you or feel comfortable with you, then they're probably not going to open up and want to learn from you.
And that's just such a huge challenge this year because we started the year off with our kids 100% remote. So there's some kids, I'm sure, that teachers have in their class that they've never even seen this year face to face. And so trying to develop ways to build those relationships in an online platform are so critical and crucial because we are so distant physically. So creating those relationships in that learning management system is critical. Otherwise, they have no desire to learn if they don't know who they're learning for or who's giving it to them, and that the person giving them the work cares about them. So important.
Yes. And I also believe that making those connections with their families, building a relationship with the families is another way you can meet their social and emotional needs, because when you connect with their families, I guess it makes them more comfortable with connecting you as well. So we're going to go through some things to show you how you can communicate better with these ELL students' families. Yes, there's that language barrier sometimes, so we'll show you some things with that. Connecting to their culture. You know, you don't have to sit there and study all day long about their culture, but you still need to know a little bit about them, I think, and how how they do things.
A new environment, especially if they're coming from a different country and they're moving in, that they're automatically a little self-conscious about being different from the majority of the kids in the classroom. And so they may be trying to hide some of their culture background and whatnot, just because of being self-conscious, which is not what we want to do. We want to highlight them, promote them, and make them proud of their culture and their background, and share with our students. The majority of our students that are in the room may be completely ignorant to the culture themselves. And so giving them that learning opportunity to see what other, you know, the world's bigger than just Duplin County, and there's other things out there.
Mm-hmm. And giving them grace is extremely important. I know that we're all struggling. I mean, you know, teachers, students, parents, everybody, especially at the beginning. I hope now we're trying to get into a groove and understand everything. But at the same time, you got to think, well, what situations are they in that they may not be able to turn this in on time? You got to think about that before you cut something off, or, you know, just think about what they may be going through. Because I know a lot of our students, especially at the beginning of the year, were sharing devices through like 4 or 5 kids in the house, and you don't know. You just got to think about things before you start, you know, cutting things off or locking things up, or you know, give them some grace. But we'll talk more about that in a.
And you want them to be accountable, but we also want them to learn, right? So just giving them, yeah, we all need grace, especially during this time, and thinking about their different situations. Especially, we have a pretty large migrant population, and their situations and circumstances are completely different from the kids that live here full time. We all have different situations that need that grace. I think that's great advice.
And then letting them express themselves, let them be them. And I've got a little link here to a video that really kind of touches on that. A great video, and it's called Let Students Lead by Their Identity. So I'm going to turn this on and show this to you guys real quick.
Young people's racial and cultural identities are critically important. And we have to acknowledge that the way we have set up opportunities for learning and development are not always respectful of the diversity that we have in this country. As we are thinking about how to maximize chances that young people are thriving, it's important to let them lead with their identity. Not bury it, but lead with it. Show it off, be proud of it, actually display it, to perform it, to put it up on the stage, to put it up on the screen, to make videos about it, to write poetry about it. So they are really bringing themselves into the room. If I come into a space and I don't trust this space and I don't bring my full self into this space, the behavior that you see may not be reflection of my competence. It's a reflection of me not being motivated to show you what I have because I don't trust this situation. If I don't have a relationship with you and I don't get to be a little bit more of who I am, you're going to slow down my learning and development by not knowing me. Schools and community organizations and families and the overall sort of environment of the community are all playing a role in shaping the experiences and contexts and relationships where learning happens. That basically is what the science of learning and development has told us, that all adults, all settings, all experiences matter.
I love that, you know, that all learning experiences matter. And so sharing and highlighting and leading with their identity, I love that idea.
And we'll get into later about giving students choice. I think that
allows them that opportunity.
Choices, yeah, to bring their culture into it if they want to, choose how they want to show their identity. So, yep.
And all students, you know, not, you know, personalities,
yeah.
you know, leading with their personalities and accepting and embracing who they are.
So here I've put some things together to kind of help us to incorporate SEL into online instruction, because of course that's what we're doing now, and but some of this can be used in the classroom too. But schedule regular check-ins with students and their families. And I know I said earlier that there's a language barrier. So a lot of these ELL students' parents do not speak English. So there's a great tool that I discovered and have used, and it's called Talking Points. It's basically like Remind, and I know a lot of teachers use Remind, but it's a messaging system or app where you choose the language, download the app, you choose the language of your preferred language. So like me as a teacher, I would want it in English because that's what language I speak. And the parents, when they download the app, they would do their preference in whatever language their first language, which, with our ELLs, a lot of is Hispanic parents may speak Spanish. So they would put their language in Spanish. Well, when I send a message out to these parents, whatever their preferred language they chose in that app, I see it in English because I sent it, but it translates it and they would read it in Spanish or
that's
whatever.
Awesome.
So it's really, and it works well. I've actually practiced and put it on. I actually put it on my husband's phone when I tried it out. And I know a little Spanish, so I sent it back to me. And since my preferred language is English, it sent it back to me in English. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful tool to use with these parents who, do not speak English.
That's one of the things we're hearing is the challenge with communicating with our parents, especially during this remote learning. And we don't all have translators that are full-time at every school. And that is just such a challenge for classroom teachers, is sharing that. So I love the idea that this takes that guesswork out for you and makes it easy for you to share with those parents.
Right. And I know we did
it for your whole class, because the English speaking parents would just choose English and the Spanish speaking parents would choose Spanish. So it's not a different app for different parents. It would work for all your parents.
And I'm just going to let you know, we didn't mention this, but we're going to have a link to this presentation, and all these are links that you can access. But I was just going to show you that this is a link to Talking Points website where you can sign up, and it's got some videos on there to kind of show you how it works too. Another way you can help with that language barrier is when I know some teachers, and I'm not sure how you guys do it, but we'll have Google Meet parent and student conferences. The parents, you can use translated captions in Google Meet. So I have a link here that kind of shows you how to do that. It's very, very easy. You can choose the language you want the captions to come into. So I would choose English. I would have it up as English if the parent is talking to me in Spanish. You understand what I mean? So
right.
Let's say we're talking to each other. You're a Spanish speaking parent.
I would see it in Spanish.
Right. You would speak in Spanish and I would speak in English. Well, I would set my captions to be English. You would set yours to be Spanish. So when you talk in Spanish, it would come to me in English and vice versa.
Which is perfect, because when we think about, like, a lot of times when you're learning a second language, the conversational language is the hardest, I think, to get a grasp on. I've taken Spanish before, and I could read it and I could write it, but when it came to talking it, I struggled sometimes in that part, because I think when you're native to that language, you talk and speak so quickly and fast that this allows them to be able to read it in their own language to be able to figure that out. I think that's great.
And the only suggestion I make with this is that I've tried this, and if you talk too fast, sometimes it'll put something up that's crazy. So you got to think about talking, and we're going to mention that later too. Speaking clearly and, not slowly, but, at a pace where you can kind of see how it keeps up with your words when you talk. So just make sure you're kind of taking your time with that.
Which is good practice in general. I know I'm a fast talker, so I struggle with that a little bit, but even when you're making your instructional videos, just doing that slow pace for your students.
And then I also got a link here. When I know that sometimes teachers make videos for their students, and sometimes the families watch those videos to try to help their students. I know that I do that with mine. I'll watch the video that the teacher made so I can get an understanding of what's going on, so I can help him with his work if I need to. And so there's also a way in YouTube, if you make the short videos, I would suggest uploading them to your YouTube channel. And yes, all teachers with Google accounts have YouTube channels. I always get that. They're like, I have a YouTube channel? Like,
yeah.
Sure. And in YouTube, you can actually set captions to translate as well, just like in the Google Meets we were talking about. So whatever you're saying on the video, and I will say these little links are videos that I've made to show you how to do it. So actually, I didn't make the one with the Google Meet captions, but these links will show you how to do that. But for time's sake, we're going to talk about it. But the captions in YouTube will translate to whatever language you prefer. So I'm speaking in English because I made the video, but when a Spanish-speaking parent watches it, this video will show you how to change it to Spanish translations, and they'll be able to see.
You could share that video, that link there out with your parents. That's awesome.
Yes, I would definitely share these links out to the parents because they're the ones that have to actually set that up. So another way to incorporate SEL is to do temperature checks in Google Meets. Ask them to drop an emoji in the chat of how they're feeling that day. I think finding out how your students are feeling is very important because that's going to affect how they learn for that day.
Well, and you think about it, like when you see somebody, you usually say, hey, how are you today? Because that's one of the first things, that's human nature, is to go ahead and share how you're feeling so that you can move on to the next part. I think that's, we need to do the same to our kids. Yeah.
And emojis are popular right now. So they love
them.
Emojis. So that, that's one way. I found this cool, I know you know what Jamboard is, Google Jamboard. I'm going to click on this, but it's called the Sunny and Cloudy. And this is from Esther Clark. I don't know if anybody knows her. She is an awesome ESL teacher. She's on Twitter. This is her idea of what makes you feel sunny, what makes you feel cloudy. And in Jamboard, I don't know if you know this, but it's a collaborative board, meaning students can post on the board whoever you share this link with. So this is a way to find out how they're feeling, and they can use pictures, sticky notes, they can type words in there. So this is a good little introductory maybe to your Google Meets on a day, just to find out how they're feeling.
Yeah, and even when you think about trying to learn about your students, it's maybe something that you might even do kind of just getting to know you activities throughout the year. I know we do them a lot at the beginning of the year, but it's important to continue to do those because our kids grow and change over the course of the year. So it might even be good to do second semester, just kind of give them that opportunity to share what things make them happy, what things make them frustrated or whatnot, so that it helps you as a teacher kind of gauge and guide their emotions.
And another thing we've actually done in a PD is called Rose, Thorn, Bud. And this is kind of like a temperature check of how, or you can come up with the questions that you want them to answer. But the rose, of course, is the flower. So it's pretty. It's just the positive things you want them to share for you. So the rose is positive. And then the thorn, of course, always the thorn hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
So, you may want to have something, I wouldn't say negative, but like a challenge you're going through.
Talk about their learning, right? And kids, that's one thing we, sometimes forget to do is have our kids reflect on the learning process. And in the learning process, we've got to take those small wins, but there's always going to be those challenges. If you're learning, there's going to be challenge.
Right. And this is just a sticky note activity. So I don't know if you know nothing about Jamboard, but what they do is they just grab a little sticky note over here, type in how they're feeling, and save it up there, and that's how this works. So a bud is kind of like a new thing. They want to share something maybe that they've learned, or they want to say, hey, I'm excited because I actually learned how to do this, or it's just a kind of a sharing slide. I think bud is something positive that they've learned, a new idea or something like that. And of course, these questions are whatever you come up with, but of course the rose is positive, like something they want to share. The thorn is maybe a challenge they're going through, and the bud is something they want to share that they've learned. And this first link up here, Roses and Thorns, it's just an article that talks about the activity and how you can use it. I just thought I'd share that with y'all too. And then lastly, as far as the temperature check or just figuring out how they're doing, you can assign colors, and we've done this too. It's kind of fun in a Google Meet. So you assign a color to different kinds of feelings. So I guess like red could be mad, blue could be sad, orange could be happy, sunny, and you ask them to hold up something in the color of how they're feeling today. And that kind of gives you an idea of if they're ready for you for that day, I guess. But I know we talk about how the cameras are off, and this is a way to turn them on.
And maybe get them to engage a little bit. Maybe they would be willing to share that way.
And if they got the cameras off, they might not be feeling it that day.
And they could kind of do the same thing in the chat, right? So if they, the kids cut their cameras off for a lot of different reasons, maybe they're uncomfortable with their background, or maybe there's 3 other kids in the background and it's loud and noisy and chaotic when they're learning. So, they have different reasons for cutting their camera off. So I think we respect that. But they could also in the chat just type that they're feeling red today, or they're feeling blue today, or they're feeling green, So I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. I like it.
That's true, because you never know why. So you don't want to say, turn your cameras on. You just need to give them grace,
Give them grace.
This one is something that I kind of think about a lot from my own experiences. When we talked about giving them grace, like you said, Lindsay, you want them to be accountable. But you got to think about what kind of situations they're going through. And that comes with learning and building those relationships. Because when you build those relationships, you kind of know what they're going through, possibly. They may have talked to you about it, and you can kind of know what's going on at home. But I feel like once you know those situations, then you need to think, okay, how can I make this online experience fit for them? You know what I mean? So if you're locking the assignments out, I mean, that's totally teacher, preference. But you got to think, okay, let's think about when or how you lock them out, or how, instead of locking, maybe give them a window of time. Like instead of due dates, you give them a window of time. So to say, this is due on this day, you can say, okay, you got till this time to this time to kind of get this done. I know that that's still a due date, kind of, in a way. But
right, yeah.
Think about how it sounds, though. When you say this is due on December, whatever. Or you can say, okay, you got from this time to this, I don't know.
And our kids are struggling with their time task management skills, right? They struggle with that whole process anyway. So providing them with that window and knowing in the back of your mind, even if you say the due date is Monday, knowing that you will be okay if they don't turn it in until Thursday, because things happen, and just, letting them have that grace, because their environments may be very different depending on their situation. And the ultimate goal is really learning, right? If the activity is important enough to assign it, then we hope that we want them to complete it because it impacts their learning, and it's something that they're going to gain from in completing. And so if we just cut them off and don't ever allow them that opportunity to do the learning activity, then they've missed out on that learning opportunity.
And another thing we've talked about is like the grades. You don't necessarily have to give a grade for everything. You can, and this is kind of giving a grade, so you can just do an incomplete or complete, because I think the grade in their mind, they see a grade, even if you're not putting it in the grade book. Sometimes seeing a grade and being like, oh gosh, maybe just you want to see that they do it. You want to make sure they understand it. It's kind of for your understanding, but maybe just an incomplete or complete would do.
Right. So if you're using it for formative assessment, if it's for you to help you gauge what you need to do next for that student to ensure they're achieving mastery, if the grade can sometimes defeat them. And so I love that idea of just saying, okay, complete or incomplete, and they know they've got it done. And then you as the teacher have the information to know, okay, well, this child needs to go back and work on these skills in order to make sure they're going to be proficient when that final summative assessment shows up.
These links down here, I really love this first one, Strategies for Supporting SEL Virtual Settings. I feel like it's a good resource. It gives you ideas for different kinds of strategies. So checking in over here, and it's by grade span. So we got grade 2, 3, 5, 6, 12, and this is just some checking in. And it also shows you the competencies of the SEL model of what it goes in under. Team building activities, goal setting, all this here, and it gives you ideas, and it even has links. So I think This is a good resource to look at when you get a chance.
And I know, time is always of the essence, even more so this year in the remote learning situation. However, it's so important. They're not going to get anything, that affective filter. If we don't figure out how to lower it and create these relationships, then none of the content matters. So I think, it's important that we as teachers build this into our instruction, because otherwise the learning is not going to take place. It's going to bounce off that filter.
And this is just a little activity calendar I found. It gives you some social, emotional activities to do with your students. And it has discussion questions you can use, activities that go along with that discussion question. I just thought this was a good thing to share as well, just to give you some ideas for questions on your Rosebud Thorn.
Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and we'll join in for episode 2, where we talk about comprehensible input.